This is the Concealed Carry Podcast, episode number 387. And welcome to the Concealed Carry Podcast, part of the concealedcarry.com network. I am your host, Riley Bowman, and I am so excited to bring this episode to you today. This is one that I had the pleasure of recording together with Bruce Gray, founder, CEO of Grayguns. And also we bring on, partway through the show, his Director of Gunsmithing, Keith Hosey, as well as his Director of Production, Jordon Castro. We had a great chat talking about all the really cool and amazing things Grayguns is up to these days. We also go back in history and see how they came to be and Bruce's background. A little bit of history lessons, too, coming out about some of the great gunsmiths back in the day and other great shooters that, well, because a lot of those guys, we have a lot of the advancements and guns and modifications and improvements that we take for granted these days. So I think you're going to really enjoy this episode. Now, this is the fifth in a series of podcast interviews I had the pleasure of doing while at SHOT Show 2020 at the invitation of Sig Sauer in their booth. And so because of that, we'd like to recognize Sig Sauer as an honorary sponsor of today's episode. And naturally, because of Bruce's kindness and willingness to come on the program, well, we got to recognize Grayguns as well. You can learn more about Sig Sauer at sigsauer.com, and you can check out Grayguns and all the amazing products and services they have to offer by heading over to grayguns.com. Now, that is grayguns.com. And officially, this episode is sponsored by concealedcarry.com. We'd love for you to stop by the website sometime and check out everything we got going on there. We appreciate your support. So without further ado, I think let's hit the play button on this interview. Let's go ahead and roll that now. Hey guys, welcome back. Riley here with the Concealed Carry Podcast, and we are still, of course, in the Sig Sauer booth at SHOT Show 2020. And I'm really excited to introduce to you our next guest, who is Bruce Gray, sometimes known as the Gray Wizard. And I'm really excited to talk with Bruce. I've actually been wanting to get Bruce on the podcast for quite some time.
Thank you.
And it's happening, and here we are. So,
well, it's a pleasure to be here, and thank you very much for the opportunity, Riley.
Absolutely. No, my pleasure entirely. So, Bruce, I mean, you have a long history in the industry.
I do. Been around a long time.
Yeah. I mean, as a shooter, as a law enforcement officer, as a master gunsmith, making some cool stuff. And so you're the founder of Grayguns, and why don't you just kind of give us a 30-second or minute rundown of who Bruce Gray is and who Grayguns is, and we'll kind of from there we'll see where it takes us.
Oh, I appreciate again, Riley, the opportunity to kind of tell our story. I don't normally try to make things about me because I'm surrounded by people that make me look good. But the reality is that when I started 46 years ago as a teenager, I failed statistics in college a couple of times. And my wife rodent jokes that a guy with an IQ of 180, it's wasted on somebody that can't, balance a checkbook or count. And that's literally true. I just don't have math, 1.0 installed very well. So naturally I go into a field instead that's basically all math and logic. I've been able to make it work only because I have been around a long time and I persisted. I've seen a lot of things come and go, but I've been very dedicated to the art of pistol smithing and to everything associated with the shooting industry for a long, long time. And so that's given me a perspective on things that's finally, at 63, allowed me to build a company that can and bring people together, some of whom are going to meet today, that are at the top of their game, that can actually do things that I couldn't do 30 or 40 years ago, technically. And that, with our association with Sig Sauer, which is an embarrassment of riches for us, has given us a reach and a depth that we never otherwise would have had. So we're able to do some things that are a little bit different, and it's fun. Largely just because I've been around long. I'm not really that smart, honestly. It's just that I've seen a lot of stuff, and when you see a lot of stuff, you start to kind of figure out what it is that you can do and what you can't do. There's a saying in engineering that it's much more important to know what you can't do than what you can try and get away with, and we're learning that. So that's kind of where we came from. I mean, yeah, I was a shooter. I definitely worked in law enforcement in a fairly low level. I'm kind of like the lowest form of law enforcement life, but I'm still a peace officer in the state of Oregon, and I have perspective on other things just from a lot of life experience that does inform our work and informs my management of my company.
Yeah. Excellent. So, how did Grayguns come to be? Like, when was the first, I guess, I don't know, year of operation? Like, or did it just sort of happen organically as well? Is it something that you just kind of dabbled and got into things? Or did you just like one day say, I'm going to start this company and this is what we're going to do?
No, it very much an organic and evolutionary thing, and very much a series of, I think, very happy happenstances and coincidences that took place in my life that allowed me to actually build the company and do what we're doing now.
Yeah.
I was the sole proprietor, pistol smith, itinerant shooter, guy that traveled around the country in a 73 Chrysler and 8-top Ramen because I had no money, building guns and having people angry with me that I was always late. You know, I was the classic pistol smith of the 70s and 80s.
Yeah.
And coming in on kind of like the heels in the industry from the greats that came before, like Jim Hogue and Armand Swenson and Frank Packmeyer and Al Capone, all these people that I idolized, gave me, again, some perspective on classic pistol smithing that kind of informed the work I did. And as an Ip6 shooter back in the day, going back to like around 1976 or so when I started shooting, again, I was able to get a lot of experience in competition that primarily became the focus of my work. But I was a lousy businessman, and I was goofy, I was flaky, I was doing too many things and not doing any of them well enough. And eventually, as I matured as a man, I think I finally woke up one day, and that was the moment, and said, you know, if I'm really going to do this, let's actually be smart about it.
Yeah.
And so I finally kind of wrestled my own demons, kind of made choices about what I was going to focus on, and became much more intently focused on quality guns and on doing what I could do the best. I didn't try to do everything for everybody. Yeah. And that actually was the difference. I actually incorporated in 2004. Before that, I was the sole proprietor as Grayguns, not incorporated, going back to around 1983 or 84. Yeah. So I've been using that name for a long time.
Yeah. And, of course, I mean, really, you kind of coming up into the industry and onto the scene was sort of in that heyday, if you will, those beginning days of particularly action pistol shooting.
Yes.
You know, as you had guys, you know, like Rob Latham and Brian Enos and others, you know, that, of course, they're down in the Arizona region of the country, but, you know, just...
I shot with them, though.
There's a lot going on, you know, as guys were figuring things out.
Yes, it was all on the table.
Yeah.
Nothing was set in stone. You know, when I came into it, the beveled magwell had only been invented in 1966 by Jim Hogue.
Yeah.
All right?
Yeah.
I mean, so think about that. I mean, we came from a time when people shot stock guns with a few things done to them to try and fix problems. And some of the top pistol smiths were starting to get into kind of the more art gun kind of thing.
Sure.
But mostly it was utilitarian to solve problems and adapt the gun to a sport or to a discipline that it otherwise maybe hadn't been ideal for. Right. And that really kind of helped the industry figure out what a practical, serviceable pistol needs. I mean, look at what comes in a modern silver pistol today. And it's all directly traceable and attributable back to the Ip6 shooters and the gunsmiths of the 80s.
Yeah.
All of it came from there.
I mean, can you give me some examples? Like, what are some, like, common things that today we just totally take for granted?
Well, let's start with a magwell. You know, now you wouldn't almost consider buying a service pistol that didn't have a mag funnel, in fact, that allowed you to easily and smoothly reload the darn thing. Whereas that did not exist. Right. You know, literally.
You look at a classic 1911 A1, you know, just like, just trying to jam it in there.
Right. Or you know, some of the first and second generation Smith autos, a Browning high power that we used to compete with, nobody even thought of it. Yeah. It just wasn't a thing. Ergonomic controls that allowed you to function and handle the weapon well, but didn't get in the way when you were shooting, was just not really a thing.
Yeah.
You know, running a safety on a Browning high power was, or P35, if we will.
Sure.
It was basically kind of an act of faith until we figured out how to extend them and make them work well. So if you look at the ergonomic package, you also look at just technically how when we were shooting 1911s and putting 100,000 rounds through a gun, and I literally watched my friend Mike Fitchman years ago literally take his Barstow barrel and all the parts out of his 1911 and throw the frame and slide away because they had so many cracks that he couldn't weld them up anymore, and then put them into a new one and keep shooting. You know, we learned what durability really was about. We learned how to make a gun that could actually run for the service life of the pistol and not go down on somebody when they're in the middle of a match or, God forbid, something worse. Whereas before, you know, if somebody built a gun with a mean 8,000 round service life, that was considered acceptable. Now, I have a 17-year-old girl, Ashlyn Green, that shoots for us. And Ashlyn sent us her gun, a P320 that we did for her about 2.5 years ago, that has 97,000 rounds through it at that point.
My goodness.
And it's still grouped. You could hit the target. It was not great, but I mean, the rifle blade was starting to get pretty washed out.
Yeah.
And again, Sig Sauer, makes top of the market barrels, but 97,000 rounds. Come on, give me a break, right?
That's a lot.
A lot, an awful lot.
And in 2.5 years.
In 2.5 years, yeah. She's shooting 50-some thousand rounds a year. Got another gun too. So she's becoming really good, obviously. But point being that the gun was fine. It worked. We put a few things in it, replaced all the springs. I think we threw a new sear and replaced it with an upgraded trigger from one of our more modern generations. Sent it back out to her, and she's still shooting it. You cannot do that with some of the firearms that were extant when I started back in 1975. It's just not happening.
Yeah. Yeah. Wow. That's fascinating. All right. So you got into shooting. You started gunsmithing, making guns for people. Incorporated in 2004. What was? I mean, I'm curious about kind of there must have been a turning point. I mean, you kind of talked about a turning point of sorts. You kind of said, I'm going to do this, and we're going to do it right. Got to be more on top of things. How did you solve that? Did you bring somebody on that sort of helped you balance that out, or did you change things, management-wise, with yourself?
Actually, I yes, in a manner of speaking. In the 80s, I traveled the country, shot matches, was good but never great. I was never the best. I was always a good, solid shooter, though, generally speaking, and built guns and lived a relatively subsistence hunter-gatherer lifestyle as an Ip6 shooter. And I didn't really think about a future. I didn't really think about where I was going to go with things beyond that. Honestly, competition is an inherently narcissistic enterprise. You know that. And so people that are competitive do think of kind of me, but they think of me in an externalized way, not necessarily about what's my future going to be. And I came to realize, honestly, that my reputation had suffered because I wasn't always doing what I said I would do, because I was trying to do too many things. And my focus wasn't really on a business. It was on having fun, in all honesty, and pursuing my personal aspirations, pursuing my dreams, but at the expense of just being able to get enough guns out, being able to take care of people. And honestly, the thing that changed my life was meeting my wife, Rodent. She was my late mother's hospice nurse. And when my mom passed away, the last thing she said to me, looking up, being the classic Jewish mother, was, see what I had to do so you'd meet a nice girl. And true story. And my wife changed my life. She gave me a sense of ethics that I think I always had but didn't always follow, if you know what I'm saying. I've always been a nice guy, but I wanted to be a good man. And she helped me to see that. She also brought me back to a relationship with God that has been incredibly important to me, and helped me create a foundation for my life and a sense of permanency that I'd never had before, that allowed whatever brains the good Lord gave me to actually finally be put to some decent use. And that's really the story. I mean, honestly, that's really the story. We married in 1995, and my life trajectory completely changed since then.
Yeah.
A lot of people have known me a long time. If you talk to Rob Latham, he's got Bruce Gray stories going back to the early 80s, and they're hilarious, and they're true. They're not always entirely flattering, frankly. And I just decided, let's do things right. Let's really, truly do things right. If I'm going to be in the industry, if I'm going to build guns, if I'm going to represent values that I believe in, then I have to manifest them. And that absolutely changed my attitude about things. I will die before I will let someone down. I will literally die before I put out a product that isn't right. We don't build junk, and we do what we say we're going to do, and that's where they came from.
Wow, that's awesome.
It was,
and I appreciate you being so frank and honest in your story and your assessment of yourself.
Well, it's just factual. Yeah. It's factual. I'm not doing myself or anyone a service if I'm going to not tell the truth about where I came from and where I'm trying to go. Yeah, and that's the thing. The company we run with my crew is fundamentally based on some values and ethics that I think everyone should follow and everyone should hold. Now, it doesn't mean that we're perfect. We make all kinds of mistakes. We get to be human. Yeah. But we do our absolute best. And I'll put up my crew, these guys here, against anyone in the industry for the quality of work they do and for their integrity. Yeah. And that's just makes it pretty easy for me to be me. Yeah. I can say whatever I want. These are the guys actually doing the work.
Yeah. Yeah, of course we have Jordon and Keith, and we're actually going to bring them on as part of this here in a little bit.
Yeah, thank you.
Yeah. In fact, I think what we ought to do is we ought to have Keith kind of walk us through some of the specifics with the guns that you brought to sort of show and tell.
Absolutely.
I think that would be good. And then we'll have Jordon share some more things about, I think, your values, where you guys are trying to go, what you're trying to achieve, what's important to you guys as a company. I actually do want to ask you that same question. I want to ask you, Gray, the Gray Wizard. I want to ask you, Bruce, what is it that it keeps you ticking? Right now, like what's driving you right now?
Really good heart medications and an excellent cardiologist, actually.
Yeah.
After multiple heart attacks and a couple of strokes, I'm blessed to be here and doing great. Actually, not complaining at all.
Yeah.
I'm actually really.
You look good.
Yeah, thank you. I feel great.
Yeah,
I feel great.
Good.
Thank you. But what keeps me ticking again is looking at the world through my wife's eyes, looking at the world through people that have been through a lot of stuff and deal with a lot of things way harder than building a gun. I have no reason not to succeed, and I've been blessed. I mean, again, we have a relationship with Sig Sauer that is, as I said before, been an embarrassment of riches for us, and I have the best people that I could ever possibly ask for. That I'm surrounded by people that make me look good. So my job is actually relatively easy these days. I get to design stuff and scrape on things and do a bunch of checkering when I feel like it, and the rest, kind of the magic happens because I've been able to coalesce some great people to support me.
Yeah. Now, as far as Grayguns, we were talking a little bit before we went live here with the recording, and you mentioned something kind of to the effect that you have a vision, you have a place that you're trying to take Grayguns.
Yes.
What is that, and what do you see Grayguns as being in the industry?
Well, first and foremost, Riley, I run Grayguns with Becky, my wife. Her nickname is Rodent, by the way, because she's kind of small and brown and runs around the baseboards and is always busy. But we run the business and have a mentality toward the business that it's really for the benefit of the employees and, by extension, the benefit of the customers. Because if we take care of our people, then everything's going to go well. I could have retired after my first heart attack, quite a number of years ago, 11 years ago now. I would have been relatively poor. I wouldn't have had an awful lot to show for, at that point, what it would have been, a 35-year career. But I would have been okay. My wife works in medicine. Everything's fine. I made a conscious decision to get back into it. And really, again, another turning point, double down on the commitment I'd already made to myself to do things well and to try and build something. And it's because I looked at my employees, my crew, people that have been with me a long time now. There's no way in the world I could let them down. So that's, when you asked before, that's really the answer I should have given you about what really drives me.
Yeah.
What the mechanism by which I implement that vision for them is to utilize their skills as well as to see things within the market and specifically things within the 6 Hour family that we can do something with to solve problems. I don't mean that to say that there's problems with SIG guns, but rather that there's things that we can do with a particular product like the P320 to adapt it to a use that perhaps it wasn't originally designed for, as an example, or to come up with the P220 10mm, which previously didn't exist until we did them as a custom job, which was then co-opted by the factory and became the 220-10 and the 220-10mm Legion. This is the kind of thing that we do in our relationship with SIG. And that's our primary mover from the technical side. And that's where we're going with the company, is to be able to produce a line of branded firearms that, again, solve problems, that fill specific niches at the top of the market, to support the production items that 6 Hour is producing, that those reflect.
Yeah.
And that's really where we're going as a company.
Yeah. Well, I guess, it kind of is back to where we started with our conversation here about things, like some of your old-time gunsmiths and some of those developments that were made then.
Absolutely. Amazing.
It all starts to filter down, that the guns we have today were influenced by the guns of the past.
Absolutely.
So I kind of see it as, correct me if I'm wrong on this, but that what the work you're trying to do is kind of that looking forward, that future, not really futuristic per se, but just what are those things, those advancements, those tweaks, those refinements that we can do that makes sense, help people become better shooters, help them enjoy their guns more. Right. And then that maybe starts trickling down. And then, 10 years from now, we're looking back and going, that.
Exactly right. No, that's exactly right. again, in the early days of IPSC practical shooting, relatively early, I mean, I came in again in kind of the second or third wave because, people had been doing some kind of proto-IPSC or combat shooting going back to the 50s. But when I came in the mid-70s, about 1976 or so, I started really getting into it. Again, everything was on the table. There weren't comp guns. There weren't red dot sights, realistically. There weren't a lot of things that we take for granted now, all of which really came from that crucible of development that IPSC was intended always to be. Now we're kind of in a postmodern era to some degree.
Yeah.
And one of the reasons that I'm really happy to be associated with Sig Sauer in our own small way is because you have a company here driven by people that are just maniacs about innovation and about pushing the envelope. Ron Cohen is a freaking genius when it comes to saying this is where things need to go because it hasn't been done before. We can take something that's good and we can make it better, or we can just go a whole different direction, like come up with a belt-fed 338 that weighs 21 pounds.
I know,
right? That's supersonic to 2,000 yards. Okay, great. That's easy to shoot, by the way, right?
Yeah.
Right? Isn't that thing amazing? And it's like, that didn't exist a couple years ago. So being associated with a company that's already at the cutting edge, again, makes my job kind of easy because I'm seeing pathways where we can come in and I don't want to say backfill necessarily, but augment and bring a little bit of value on the aftermarket side.
Yeah.
But there are still things that need to be invented.
Yeah.
I mean, we're somewhat postmodern because we can run pistols with red dot optics. I had the distinction of being one of the first shooters, probably in North America, to run a red dot optic in competition. Back in the old modified division, way back in, like the 90s, there was a company called Firepoint. They sponsored me. I had a bunch of their sites. And, nice bunch of people. But it was a long time ago, and the technology just wasn't there. Now we have stuff like the Romeo 2 that you can put on a gun, a 10 millimeter, and bang the heck out of it. And there's still a sight on that slide, and it's still running. And that wasn't happening even a couple of years ago, realistically. That. So things are really advancing, but I think there's still new things that can be invented. And we're looking for those opportunities. I don't have a crystal ball to say what the next thing's going to be.
Right.
Being a pistol smith that worked on an existing gun, I tend to be a little derivative. But we have some things up our sleeves that we're going to be coming out with that I think are push the envelope a little bit more.
Yeah. I think that from my observation, you seem to be a pretty humble guy. And as you mentioned, you don't necessarily like to make yourself the focus of the talk, but I think it's worthy, to give some props here. So what are some of the things that you guys have been really an integral part of developing, talking about things that kind of get developed and then filter down to like the guns we're seeing on this floor right here below. What are some of those things? Well,
I mean, thank you. There was a lot of people doing a lot of stuff back in the late 70s and early 80s when I really started to kind of come on. And so it is a little unseemly for me to feel like I'm taking credit for things that in reality were kind of co-developed or parallel invented, if you will, parallel development with a lot of people. But I do have some weird kind of distinctions, I guess, in that regard. When I started shooting, recoil was an issue. If you're going to go fast, you got to have a flatter gun, and you got to have more rounds. So I was the first person, realistically, I think, to do 38 Super and to do a compensated pistol. I won a championship in Northern California in 1981 with what would be considered pretty much a modern single-stack race gun. There are other people, again, that were doing things in parallel with that, but that original kind of early experience definitely did change things. All of a sudden, overnight, everybody had to have a compensator and everything. I mean, I talked to an Argentinian lounge singer at a hotel in Traverse City, Michigan, that told me about a compensator design he had on a napkin. All right, so I mean, everybody by the mid '80s had a compensator, and it became a thing. Again, the red dot sights. I may have been certainly one of the first to do that here with a what was at least a somewhat viable product. People making a really good effort at it. So there's a lot of things like that a lot of people were working on. It's just that because I was around a long time and because I reasonably smart, but also wanted to compete and would much rather put a lot of effort into the equipment than actually go out and train so I could beat Rob Latham or Ryan Enos, which I never did, because they worked harder. I figured, let's just work on the technology and the guns instead. That was always my focus, actually. I was a shooter because I really love shooting, but I was a gunsmith because I'm passionate about trying to invent stuff and make things. So those are just a couple of examples of things that I had the pleasure of being involved with early on. There was a company called DeVell Incorporated, that you probably heard of. They were, one of the first of the kind of higher-end boutique gunsmiths that build a finished product for customers out of Ohio. Charlie Kelsey ran the company. He was a maniac. God rest his soul. He's since passed away. Working there, they brought me in because I was, again, the guy that had experience with 38 Super Comp guns, and they had something called the Gammon that they were producing as basically a ready-to-go race gun. It was something that was very revolutionary for the time.
I feel like I remember seeing that in, at this time, ancient, like, Guns and Ammo magazine or something.
Probably, yeah.
I feel like I remember seeing that somewhere in print, you know?
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah.
American Handgunner, Cameron Hopkins did articles on them.
That could be it.
I know Wayne Novak, from the Sight Company and the great pistol smith, has a big collection of DeVals. Actually, he's got he collects them. So these guns are still around.
Yeah,
but they were pretty pioneering, and I guess at the time, I'm sitting here checkering a frame for something that was going to go to one of our sponsored shooters. I didn't think about what I was doing exactly. I knew we were kind of innovating a little bit, but it was hard to really see how far that might potentially go. The 10 millimeter is an interesting question because if you told me 15 years ago that, because we started doing P220s and 10 millimeter as a custom item, on the stainless frame versions, that 10 millimeter would become so important that 6R would sell more P220s in 10 millimeter than in 45, I would have said you were nuts. This was like the heyday of the P series pistol. How in the world could that happen? And 10 millimeter had already had its arc of trajectory. It had already kind of ascended and kind of gone somewhere. Right. And then people were saying, I don't think I need 250 power factor in my life. We'll go back to a 45 or a 40 or a 9. Right. And now it seems like you go from 9 to 10. And there's not a lot of numbers in between anymore, right? And again, so this is something that I wouldn't have foreseen myself. I think when people develop things and come up with good ideas, very often, and certainly true in my case, they don't really have that big crystal ball vision of saying this is going to go someplace really wonderful. And years from now, they'll build a giant statue to me in my honor. It doesn't work that way, and that's. So I think I'm very righteously humble because in reality, so many people in this industry have done so many brilliant things. And when I think of the real innovators as pistol smiths, I think of people like Jim Boland, my dear, late friend that I shared a shop with for years, who was the most innovative person in our industry ever in terms of just being able to come up with amazing things to make a 1911 run. There's a bunch of people like that out there that I think deserve every bit as much credit or more.
Yeah. Well, you just threw out one name. Who are some of the other people that have personally helped you along?
Well, that's a really excellent question. A lot of them are shooters that came to me with ideas or with problems. Mike Dalton, for instance, from the Southwest Pistol League, dear friend of mine that I shot with in the early 80s. Mickey Fowler, his shooting partner, is still a very dear friend of mine today. These are guys that came to me and said, can you make this more accurate? I've got a sharp edge here that's hurting me, this kind of stuff. Those are the guys that really most of the ideas came from. Trying to figure out a way to solve problems for shooters. So in that sense, there's hundreds. In terms of people within the industry, again, Jim Boland was a huge mentor of mine. Don Nygaard, who was a brilliant pistol smith, also has since passed away, and a great Olympic level ISU style shooter, taught me a lot about just how to run a gun in a precision sense and about what accuracy really was. Before that, I could build a good gun. Getting to know him, I built tremendous guns, frankly, because I understood what it took to actually be that precise, that meticulous. They're huge mentors. Any pistol smith out there that I ever came in contact with, I'm sure I learned something from. Again, because I've been around so long, by osmosis, I picked up little things here and there, and most of it stuck.
Well, that's good. We're glad about that.
Thank you.
So I think at this time, I'd like to bring on, let's bring on Keith. Let's bring Keith on, your chief gunsmith.
Yep.
Right?
Keith is our director of gunsmithing and phenomenal guy.
Let's bring Keith on. He's over there chatting with Hannah.
Okay.
And let's bring some of the guns over here, and let's talk about some of the specifics of these. Hey, Jordon, would you mind bringing the guns over? Yeah. All right. So we'll talk to Jordon here in just a minute. We only have the 3 mics, though, so.
Okay. I can scoot over a little bit.
Sure.
Yeah, thank you.
Yeah, and then we'll let Keith kind of sneak in there a little bit. I think I may be able to even scooch just a touch.
Okay.
All righty. So we've got Keith Hosey. He's right here with us, your director of gunsmithing at Grayguns. Keith, go ahead and say hello.
Hi, guys.
We'll get you dialed in here. Let's try that again.
Hello.
Yep, that's better. So,
awesome.
Keith, we've been talking with Bruce here for a little bit, kind of about background of the company, the founding of things, and a lot of kind of historical type, just kind of how we got to where we are today with a lot of things. I'd like to kind of hear just real quick, Keith, like, what's your background and how did you get started, and also how did you wind up with Bruce here?
Well, let's see, going back to 2010, 2011, I was doing a welding program at a junior college. Within that welding program, I learned how to TIG weld, which I really liked. I didn't want to go out into the oil industry down in Bakersfield, California.
Right.
That just didn't sound appealing. But within that, I had to take a machining class. And in that machining class, I saw what I could actually do with different slides, or it showed that how guns were made.
Yeah.
So I thought, wouldn't it be awesome if I could find a program where I could become a gunsmith? Luckily, California has one of the best gunsmithing programs in the country, Lassen Community College in Susanville. So I went up there, took a 2-year program, and got my associate's degree in both firearms repair and general gunsmithing.
Cool.
So after that, I asked my brother, who's also a big gun enthusiast, where should I apply? And he said, well, I got some guns worked on by Bruce Gray one time, and he's probably one of the best in the industry for SIGs. So I sent him an email and came up and started working for him in 2016.
Wow. And here, 3-4 years later, you're Director of Gunsmithing. That's quite a trajectory, young man.
And so coming in, I was working on the different production gunsmithing. Saw that there were some lapses and things. Wait times probably weren't the best. But Bruce gave me the power and the to oversee everything and kind of streamline everything and get the efficiencies to where they need to be, and get our wait times really fast turnaround times for the customers.
And a higher level of quality than we were producing, doing things under previous methods. If I could just interject.
Yeah, absolutely.
Keith has a number of superpowers, but one of the things I value him most for, besides his heart and sharing our values, is that he's a tremendous strategic thinker. Yeah. He's disciplined. He has rigor in what he does. He's organized. And so when he came in, he looked at the somewhat managed chaos that I was barely able to kind of hang on to, and I'm flattering myself to even say that. And he created systems for everything. One of my dreams has been that I'll wake up that one day and everything will be where it's supposed to be, and my bench is clean, and the next job is waiting there. And that day is almost ready to happen because of Keith. He's revolutionized our business. He's the best there is. Absolutely the best there is.
That's amazing. I mean, how do you feel like hearing that and being here? I mean, in such a short. I mean, there's guys that work in this industry for a long time to get to where you're doing what you're doing. I mean, there's guys that are still cutting their teeth on doing the most probably menial of tasks. So I mean, how does that make you feel?
I feel honored to be with Grayguns and working under Bruce Gray.
Yeah.
Getting to not only see the production side, which is one thing, like that's the part that probably keeps the lights on. Is the production gunsmithing is not the most glamorous job.
Yeah.
But we make the customers happy with that.
Yeah.
And
Absolutely.
then as well as doing some of the custom stuff, say like this 210 and the 320, that's broadening my horizons in that I'm allowed to both gunsmith sometimes and go in on the office, pull up the computer and start learning how to use the CAD CAM software that we have. And it's just amazing. I couldn't ask for a better company to work with.
That's awesome.
Well, again, very humble guy. Not everybody can do this work. Yeah. And you know that. You've seen that because you've seen everything there is to see in the industry by now.
Maybe not everything.
Well, you've seen a lot of stuff.
I've seen a lot.
Right. And so, there are people that have different capabilities. And, people rise and fall to those levels to some degree. The Lord, I think, creates us to be able to do different things, really, really well, but not everything well.
Yeah.
Again, Keith has some amazing superpowers. He's very, very strong on organization. He's very strong on understanding the mechanics of things. And he's extremely talented with his hands. He can take the vision, he can see what the metal is, and he can actually make something out of it. Not everybody can do that. And I've worked with probably a couple hundred different gunsmiths over the years in various different training programs. I taught gunsmithing at RIT, consulted with a lot of people, met a lot of armorers everywhere. There's a handful of people that have it, and Keith has it.
That's awesome.
He has the thing.
That's awesome.
Not everybody has that thing. He does. And that's why he's here.
Cool.
And I'm very blessed that he took a shot with us, And it's been great.
That's great. Let's talk about what we have here on the table here. A couple new things you guys are really excited about introducing here at SHOT Show. Of course, we saw these out at the 6-hour range days.
Yep.
And so what I have here first is a P320, And I know some viewing and listening are going to be really excited to learn that, a 10 millimeter is coming to the P320 platform. And that is really exciting.
Thank you.
I mean, I'm sure there's some people who are like, well, can that be done? How's that going to be done? How's that going to work? You've had to take something that didn't exist. You weren't handed something from SIG that was like, hey, we made this, and so, go tweak it, make it better. You've had to build this from the ground up.
Yeah, we did. I'm not a degreed engineer, and I'll preface that for sure.
Yeah.
And so I'm never going to step out of my lane and say that I can sit down and engineer things the way the brilliant people that work for this company can. So we are very reliant on people that can put numbers to the things we can invent and tell us why the things we're doing work.
Yeah.
Okay. But we can inform that process in a practical way. And so in looking at the P320 in a practical context, from our experience as gunsmiths and gun makers, we pretty much knew where everything had to go. It's taken us a while. We modified a 45 slide about 4.5 years ago, just to give us kind of a baseline. And I shot it at the time a little bit. I was kind of afraid to. And did a few other things. And then because of bandwidth issues and such, we kind of let it lapse for a while. But we always knew that eventually Phil Strader and his team were going to do a 10 millimeter production gun as a factory item. Again, following very much in the model of, say, the P320 10 millimeter or 220 10 millimeter we did. We figured that it made sense for us to pioneer that. That gives us basically an upmarket kind of top of the market, semi-custom boutique kind of firearm that Keith and his crew can produce to solve that problem, but also kind of pave the way and create excitement and create buzz, and also prove the concept for the pistol, for the optic, which is crucial, which we'll talk about, for the grip module and for the geometry, and to prove to people that it's actually going to be durable. One of the things we didn't want our original 220 10 millimeters to do was to become an expensive toy. This won't be. And from there, I'll kick it over to Keith.
Yeah. So go over the key features of this P320 10 millimeter. So obviously there's a new slide and barrel. There's a lot of things you had to do to make that work.
Yep. So on the 320, we have a massive slide. I believe it weighs at 16.5 ounces.
Right now it does, yeah.
It's basically
chunky.
about as much as a P365 by itself, right?
Yeah. Right. So it does look big, but we put a Barstow barrel in it. We have the guys over at Barstow helping us out with that. And then I can't remember the recoil spring.
That recoil spring is one actually adapted from the factory P220 10 millimeter system that Matthew Taylor and his team came up with for that project going back a few years ago.
Gotcha.
Yep, cool. And then everything else in the guts is going to be the same as any of our standard P320 action work.
Yeah, yeah. But you have the newer trigger on there with the over travel adjustment, right?
Yeah. So this has the hybrid trigger, which is kind of the best of both worlds, and the straight versus curve. Yeah. I actually prefer it highly over the straight. I'm not a big straight trigger person.
Yeah, absolutely.
So I'll just say, my own personal journey from kind of a curved trigger to a straight trigger, which has been in just the last few years, occurred because, I was never as big a fan of the really aggressively curved trigger that is, a little more common on SIG pistols and or any pistol that's a DASA action. I started moving over to the straight trigger, and I found I really like the straight trigger. I put a straight trigger on dang near everything. But handling that kind of happy medium, that's got me intrigued.
Yeah, so for me, it allows you to be more tactile on the trigger, so you know kind of where your finger is placed on the trigger face, compared to just kind of grabbing it and kind of guessing on a straight and not having any form of reference of where your finger's placed.
Yeah, yeah. Now, of course, one thing that is for sure the kind of the same across a lot of these different trigger designs that we see that you guys put out is that we have a flat face. Okay, we're talking different than the profile that's either flat or curved, but that face. A lot of people, I think, don't quite understand why I think that's relevant. Just feel free to jump in and say, if I say something wrong. But the way I think of it, the way I see it is as I'm shooting and as I'm, particularly when I'm like really trying to feel the trigger, it helps me to recognize, am I applying pressure on the face of the trigger as opposed to kind of hooking it a little bit, pulling it, pushing it, that sort of thing. That's to me what the beauty of a flat face trigger does. Is there anything else you'd add to that?
From my perspective, when I was doing Olympic program type stuff, shooting free pistol, air pistol, everybody was running straight triggers. And I questioned it at the time. And the theory presented to me going back, 20-some years ago, was simply that it was very resistant to bad inputs compared to a curved trigger, again, that locked you into a set position and therefore allowed you to put side load, up, down, left, right from a set position on the gun.
Right.
A flat trigger, again, gives you that sense that, you've got plenty of pressure contact between the pad of your finger and the trigger, but it's pretty resistant to misplacement and maybe kind of snatching at it and such.
Yeah.
We spent a lot of time with the hybrid trigger. And actually, I should say, this is the first trigger profile we came out with for the P320, going back almost 5 years ago, in our initial run of custom triggers for these guns. We worked on it to come up with something that, if we snatched at the trigger really hard and fast, the sight still didn't move much. And we played with profiles until we came up with something that would do that. It's very much like with the X module we designed for SIG. We just spent a lot of time working on a module that was resistant to bad inputs and allowed the sights to drag, go back, and stop. And that's really the organic shape that came out of that effort. It wasn't just, this looks cool and I can sell it. It's that this works really well, and I hope people will appreciate it.
Yeah.
And a little bit of a difference there.
Yeah.
And, and I think it's been very successful.
Cool. All right, so we got the now this is built on a 45 grip module.
For the time being, it is, yes,
right,
because we're still working on a custom grip module. And when I say custom, a Grayguns grip module that actually does the job we want it to do.
Interesting. And now I know that one kind of question, or even almost like a concern that some might wonder is like, and now again, it sounds like you're working on something kind of custom or semi-custom, but I know that some people would probably see this and be like, well, it's really hard to get a hold of a 45 grip module.
Right.
These days, like they seem to be getting more scarce all the time.
They are. I think, Riley, that problem is going to be solved on a number of fronts. Now, we've talked with the folks at SIG, and we know that they're working on something.
Yeah.
And beyond that, I prefer not to disclose too much again, because that's really a story they need to tell.
Yeah.
We're certainly working on something as well.
That's cool.
We have some other friends that have been doing some aftermarket grip modules. You're probably familiar with Yuri Mirza and his grip module for the P320. Great guy, phenomenal guy. His grip module is a little specialized and a little adapted to his particular application, but he's got some really good ideas. And so we've been consulting with them and some other people.
So in other words, what you're saying is we can expect at some point to see a 10mm P320 with a grip module that is still somewhat svelte, if you will. I mean, is that what you're saying?
Yeah, absolutely.
Because I know a lot of people will pick up a 45 grip module and be like, ooh, it kind of feels a little bit big for their particular hands.
Yeah, it's no. I mean, in defense of SIG, though, if I may, this grip module here, I've got Munchkin fingers. I've got relatively small hands.
I'm similar, by the way.
Yeah, well,
for my height too, I'm 6'3". Like my fingers are kind of short and stubby.
They actually, no offense, but they kind of are.
They kind of are, right?
Well, I'm 5'11". I used to say I was 6 feet until somebody actually measured me. And yet, with this 45 grip module, I can still get a decent purchase on the trigger. I can still run the gun. There's nothing about this that would cause the pistol to index funny. It's actually really comfortable. Yeah. The X module
I don't disagree, by the way.
A little, thank you. The X module is a little blockier, and it needed to be because when we designed it, it was for competition, and we needed to be able to incorporate the biggest magwell we could and still have ergonomics that actually met or exceeded what our competition was beating us with.
Yeah.
Our concern for the 10mm and for other things that will follow on from that is that we want to have a module that is really, really shootable, and actually which justifies the value-added proposition we're actually asking people to pay for. We're going to build a top-of-the-market, high-grade gun on the P320 system. And so it's going to be a really nice module.
That's awesome, man. Glad to hear that. Now, on this P320, 320, we've got the Romeo 2.
Yes.
Which has been, people have kind of heard some things about Romeo 2. In fact, even I've seen some things like a year ago.
Right.
And we were just talking with a fellow from the Electro-Optics Division, Andy, about the Romeo 2, and you got that mated here on the 320 10mm slide. That's
right.
Pretty exciting to see. So tell us a little bit about this.
Keith, would you speak to that?
Yep. So what Andy was telling us was this: the Romeo 2 is a military-grade optic. That what they wanted to do is be able to drop it from the 6 feet, the shoulder height, and have it survive an impact. Of course, these are built in Oregon, and they accomplish that with this Romeo 2.
Yeah. I'll tell you, this thing is built like a tank.
It is.
I mean, looking at it.
It is.
But it's got a great profile. It's not it's not overly large. I can see that there's some really good, thought process here with the integrated rear notch. It even looks like some dots.
Yes, absolutely.
So clearly, this is intended that we can run some sort of whatever appropriate height front sight there and co-witness it there with the rear notch on the rear, and it is a really rugged.
Yeah, I mean they give you a real sight
optic
versus just kind of an afterthought that almost barely works.
Yeah. Side loading battery tray, so that's cool to see.
Fantastic.
As well.
Yeah, absolutely fantastic. Which you'd have to have for a military grade, or law enforcement grade sight.
Yeah, and
absolutely.
of course we learned that this is waterproof.
Yep.
Yeah, which is also really cool.
Up to 2 atmospheres, I think. I believe Andy was saying.
Yeah, that's really impressive. It's a great looking optic. I'm excited to see these eventually get out, which we learned to be pretty soon.
Yes, I can't speak for SIG,
Right.
but I'm sure by the middle of the year people are going to have these. Our plan is to be able to offer this sight because it is robust enough to really take what a 10 millimeter puts out.
That's where this has got to go.
And that's where this has got to go.
Say,
exactly.
I'm going to put a dot on this 10 millimeter.
Right.
It's got to be a rugged dot.
And here's the thing, a 10 millimeter Norma full power round is a long distance, very, very powerful, very capable round. Mm-hmm. Being on duty as a part-time sheriff's deputy in Eastern Oregon, I carried a 10 millimeter, one of the 220s I built, on duty for a couple of years because realistically, some of the shots I had to take were trying to humanely dispatch a wounded elk that was trying to cross the John Day River in winter that had been hit by a car from 80 yards away over ice. This kind of thing,
wow.
which I've done.
Wow.
Sadly, because it's one of the least favorite things I ever had to do.
Sure.
But the point being that if you have a sight that actually can exploit that capability, now with the right bullet weight, with the right setup, and with the right the right skills, you can hit something 150 yards with this if you had to.
Oh yeah.
I mean, it makes it a serious tool.
Yeah.
Rather than
a dot
expensive toy.
expands the use and capabilities of a pistol.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
And when you have a caliber like this that has that capability and an accuracy potential of this gun that'll rival anything, because these things are going to shoot phenomenally well. You could be somebody with it.
I'll tell you, it wasn't until I got into 3-gun competing that I had never really. I mean, I'd plinked around with shooting at longer distances with a pistol before, but it was not something I had tried to do particularly, super precisely or under pressure.
Right.
And then I remember one of my first 3-gun competitions, we had some steel targets at 70, 80, 90, 100 yards. And iron sights, and I got the job done, but I remember, I learned some stuff trying to hit some further out targets that way.
Right.
Then I started shooting, I put a dot on my 320 X5, started shooting open Division 3 gun almost a year and a half or so ago. And then all of a sudden, like hitting those steel targets out at 80, 90 yards, like, easy, going one for one, just really, really a cool, technology to see coming to pistols more and more. It's becoming more and more a thing. Now we have next to the 10 millimeter 320, this, of course, I was really, really thrilled to see this at the range the other day.
Thank you.
So
are we, because we busted our butts trying to get it ready. What did we go through to get that done?
Many countless nights.
Countless
sleepless
sleepless nights. Oh, my word.
Now we got the P210 here, which
That's right.
SIG has resurrected over the last couple of years, and it's a fantastic platform. It's a beautiful gun. It's really the handgun that SIG really. I mean, people think they hear SIG and they think P226, P229,
Sure, of course.
But really, this is
actually
it all.
Absolutely.
Yeah. So
absolutely.
The P210 created in 1949. It's a long time ago. And people will say, "Oh, it looks like a CZ." Well, it was actually around for a couple of decades before the CZ75 came to be. So, so definitely, really, the more accurate statement would be this: the CZ looks like a P210. Somewhat resembles it than
exactly. This was the progenitor of anything with the outside frame rails and the Petter lockup system and the kind of end block fire control system that came from the French 1935A. Basically. Yeah. I'm starting to sound like Ian from Forgotten Weapons now, probably, who we talked to yesterday about this. But the reality is that this was the progenitor of that entire family of firearm. Yeah. The original version of this, and then our friend Tim Butler and his team here at 6 Hour. Took the brilliant European German gun and found a way to democratize it, to make it affordable and accessible for the American market, using newer manufacturing processes. We don't want to say MEM because people get freaked out by that, but it's got some of the best MEM I've ever seen in this, in the original version, and created a gun that for $1,000 or so will shoot an inch at 50 yards. I mean, come on.
That's ridiculous.
It's ridiculous. These things are nuts. They're incredible.
People get excited when a rifle shoots an inch at 100 yards or less. Yeah. This is approaching rifle territory.
Well, an inch at 50. Did I say 100? I didn't
You
mean to
said
say.
no. I just used that as a comparison. Like
No,
the
absolutely.
standard inch at 100.
Well, look.
And here you're shooting an inch at 50.
As a Bianchi shooter, and as a precision shooter, doing some bullseye and stuff back in the day, PPC, building guns for those guys, working with some of the greats, Mickey Fowler, who won Bianchi Cup early on, one of the greatest offhand shooters I ever saw. These are guys that could exploit a gun that could shoot an inch at 50, and that was the gold. No, that was the platinum standard. Gold standard was 2. So you can get an inch and a half, you're doing great. And most people couldn't do it.
Oh, sure.
With enormous amounts of expense and effort and custom barrels and multiple barrels in and out of guns and fine-tuning and fitting and working with load development. And so I take this thing and I put some factory V-crowns in it, and with our friend Tim from product management, shot one of the prototypes, and just kind of off a bench out at 6 Hour Academy, got about 2 inches just screwing around with like weird light, and I didn't have my shooting glasses on.
Wow.
All right, so
unreal.
What can you say about that? Phenomenal gun.
Now, Keith,
I can't say enough about
Keith,
it.
tell us about what you guys have done. I mean, you won't see this on 6 shelves. So tell us about this particular P210.
So we sat down with our friend Joe Dawson with Bruiser Industries, and he loves this gun. And he said, "What can we do to modernize it and bring it up to a duty standard gun?" The main thing he wanted was a rail. So that we started with
and we definitely see
an accessory rail that we
got the X300
welded on there.
That's right.
Yeah.
Then we moved to the controls. They're kind of 1911 style slide release and safety lever. They give you a little bit more leverage. They're serrated and rounded off, so it's not as sharp. We stuck in a flat trigger.
Yep. It's a little bit different profile there.
But an extended mag release as well as an integrated mag well.
Yeah.
And then we go.
And a +2 base pad on top of it that Jordon Castro came up with.
Yeah. I mean, look at that. It's a great look. And I'll tell you that magwell is, fantastic for a P210 that, again, was designed in the era where they weren't thinking about magwells.
They weren't thinking about loading it at all. Nope.
So now tell me a little bit more about the trigger, Keith. This thing has, already the P210 is a great trigger, but you guys made it better. Took it up a whole other level.
Bruce has a way with triggers. He was able to look at it and figure we could get more out of this trigger. So we designed the trigger and hammer as a pair to take out some of the take up in the gun, as well as shortening up the reset.
Yep. So our net reset is about half, maybe real close to half. And honestly, I haven't measured it, with an indicator yet. But it's short. It takes a phenomenal trigger for individual shots and makes it into a phenomenal trigger that you can squirt with if you need to.
Yes.
I used to shoot a P210 back in the 80s a little bit. I've always shot weird stuff and gave one a try. And I just found that I couldn't shoot more than about a 20 split with it because the reset was just too long and it would stall on the reset because the reset was too soft.
Sure.
So we've looked very hard at what we could do, and critically to again make the trigger capable for anybody that wanted to shoot as fast as they could. Yeah. Joe Dawson, of course, a champion level shooter in his own right. Just retired from Naval Special Warfare, knows how to run a gun.
Yeah.
And he really demanded a trigger that would take it next level.
Yeah. And I'll tell you, I went right from your booth trying this out, checking the reset like you were talking about. I would be surprised if it isn't at least half of a reduced reset travel. Went right out to the range and shot the standard P210 and was like, that feels like a mile long after I worked this one about 50 times.
and again, they're still good. And for what the 210 is for, and I think for the folks that are purchasing that gun from 6 Hour today, it is essentially a high-end target pistol that people can actually really afford.
Yeah.
It does everything I would want a target pistol to do. So there's no criticism of the gun. That we see that for our application, there's more we can do.
Well, that's a great point, because in a more target-oriented world, reset, really not that big a deal.
Absolutely.
You're shooting slower, but you start building something that somebody might actually consider as a more of a defensive gun or action shooting of some sort. Then that starts to become more critical.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
That's fantastic. And it looks great. I don't know if you have it here, but I also saw that you had a Romeo Zero mounted onto a P210.
Yes, we do.
And that was awesome.
Yes. We did that because our friend Mr. Nichols at Electro Optics in particular had an interest in seeing how that would kind of fit up. He provided a couple for us. And we look at how it fits, and it actually works well. We pretty much, at this point, kind of whacked the rear side off, created a space, and just kind of stuck it on. And it's fine.
You wouldn't think about putting a dot on a P210 because it's already so narrow, the slide.
Right.
And the Romeo Zero makes that possible.
It does. It's small. It's compact. It's the right width, and the screws located in such a place where we have space within the slide to be able to do it. Now, going beyond that, though, the 210 A carry has a different slide profile that actually is much more amenable to be able to run an optic.
Yeah.
And that was something that I think was a very clever idea that Steve Gilchrist came up with, along with Mr. Butler and other people working on that product. So I think that you'll see in that in the future. I'm sure you're going to see a sight plate and a capability to be able to run things on and off as they further develop that.
Awesome.
And that may be a slide profile that we'll be interested in working with as we build Grayguns branded versions of that gun with them.
Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah. Of course, you got to do things in like Grayguns gray color.
Yep.
And whatnot, right? So,
Right.
What a beautiful gun and
you.
a great shooter. I'm sure.
Thanks to these guys. I got to talk about Keith and Jordon from the capabilities of what they were able to do. They created CAD model files and made it possible to manufacture all these parts in a very, very short period of time. And our machinist, Dave Crozier, who's brilliant. He's the best there is. Everything in one shot. It was amazing. So we could have guns here to do what we want to do. Kind of swinging for the fences, but we got it all done. All these components will be produced. They'll be expensive, not going to lie.
Sure.
But they will be available for people that want to be able to take their factory 210 or 210A, because these also fit on the German Legend, and be able to get this performance out of it completely drop in.
Nice.
No fitting, no fuss, no muss.
Yeah.
The only thing with the magwell is that there's a little bit with that, but it's no big deal.
Yeah. Awesome.
These guys did a brilliant job with it. I'm really proud of my guys.
Great work, Keith.
Thank you.
Do you want to say anything more before I let you go and bring Jordon on for a moment?
Just a few other things. We did add the 10-8 sights on this, and
yes.
The name of this gun is going to be the P210 Bruiser, and we hope to be able to get the guns in, build the guns up, and have ready-built guns this year sometime.
That's right. Yeah.
That way, keep wait times low. People can.
Yeah. We're working with Hilton on the rear sight and a couple other little projects with them, and I think it's very important for us to be able to kind of raise him up, because he's put a lot into that profile, and it's exactly the sight that Joe and I wanted. It's exactly what we wanted, and Hilton got that to us in a week.
Wow.
So he's the man.
So
Hilton Yam is the man.
You really did work quickly, and
absolutely,
again, you made it happen. So
congratulations
to you.
This is a reflection of. You're asking me again, where do I want to go?
Yeah.
I want to be able to do things fast and at the top of the market and efficiently. And so having the right people that can be nimble and who can just jump on stuff and put in the time and not make mistakes and not backtrack and not end up with stuff that doesn't work, that's not compatible. That's where we wanted to go, and we have that capability.
Awesome.
Great.
Well, sorry to see Keith go, but we only have the 3 mics, so let's bring Jordon Castro on. Thank you, Keith.
Come on in, Jordy. Hey, bud.
All right.
Thanks for having me on.
Yeah. So here we have Jordon Castro. And tell us a little about, Bruce, you do the intro of Jordon here.
Well, Jordon Castro came highly recommended to me by my former sheriff, now retired, Chris Humphreys, who's a phenomenal man, a guy that I would follow into a molten volcano tomorrow. Yeah. If Chris Humphreys says something, I believe it, period. Unimpeachable. So when he came to me one time and said, there's this young man that I'd like you to meet, and when he gets out of school, if you ever listen to me about anything, and this is a guy I've gone through the door with, right, then I, hire this guy, hire this young man. And on faith, we met, got to know you. I was in the middle with my team at the time of trying to produce 1,250 triggers a week for the 6-hour Legion DASA guns that were new on the market and really hot. And SIG was just, every week I get a call from a guy, Mr. Dennis, that would ask me, how many triggers were shipping that week, and it had to be 1,250. And Jordon came in just on his own time and just was polishing triggers and prepping things for us and working long nights to help that happen. I saw this young guy having this tremendous work ethic and heart. The thing with Jordon is his superpower is that I know that no matter what happens, I don't even have to think about him not making the right decision. So I basically put him in charge of the production side of the company because I have absolute faith in his judgment and absolute faith in his work ethic, and he's smart as hell. And Chris was absolutely right. It was the best thing I ever did between these two guys. I've got 2 fantastic people, and both of them actually came recommended to me independently as well.
Yeah.
And so that's how we met anyway. And
Yeah.
The rest is history now.
the rest is history. Well, the rest is your history because you guys are going to continue to run the company for the rest of your life. So, but
Yeah. Well, my goal for this year for production side is now that I got another guy helping me out, we can really step up on our rate of production and make sure that it's the same Grayguns quality that it's been, and it'll allow me to do more of the designs for our new product to help take pressure off of Bruce and kind of segue me into and Keith to be able to kind of help Bruce take the load off, and that way we're having a little bit more of a productive year, hopefully.
yeah, absolutely.
Well, that's one thing about Grayguns and the product you guys put out is that people get it, people like it, they want more, and then you have that problem of we'd like to give you more, but it's a challenging thing.
Wouldn't you agree, Jordon, that that's been our biggest issue?
That's been my biggest challenge this year. And being relatively new to this type of position, there was a lot of growing pains, a lot of learning for me, and I feel like this year I've learned a lot, or this past year I've learned a lot, and now I got that. Our new guy, Darvin, he's really really taking the pressure off of me to kind of walk him through what needs to be done. And so having him take on that role is helping me spend more time with Bruce. And, this slide was the first really main thing that Grayguns has produced that I've had a hand in designing. So having that so well received by everybody at Range Day was really encouraging, and just goes from here now.
Well, if I may, I mean, a slide might be considered one of the more challenging and critical things that you do in gun making.
Yeah.
Let's face it. There are people that make great slides. There's also a lot of stuff out there that's kind of funny. It's a hard thing to make. And I have to brag on Jordon. He's very self-effacing, but he was able to come up with a model file and inform the fine tuning of that by our engineer machinist in record freaking time, 9 days. 9 days. They were able to take everything we'd learned up to that point, synthesize it into a model, and end up with 3, because we don't have just one of these. We have 3 of this pattern. And already we figured out, or Jordon's actually figured out, the cosmetic design that this will actually be reflected in the finished product.
Gotcha.
And he's done that all just amazingly and unerringly. So I can't say enough.
Good job, man.
Phenomenal.
Thanks.
Yeah, not phenomenal. He's very self-effacing. He's modest.
Yeah.
These guys are geniuses.
Yeah.
I'm telling you.
That's great. And again, you're a young guy, and here you are,
23.
23.
Yeah.
Just
running half of a multi-million-dollar company.
I was not doing anything like what you were doing at your age. So what a remarkable opportunity you have. But obviously, again, you came highly regarded, and you've proven yourself, or else I presume you would not still be here. So, so my first kind of learning about, I guess I was aware of Grayguns for some time, a couple of years probably. But it wasn't until I really got into the P320 platform, and I enjoy the 320. I picked up an X5, started shooting that, enjoying that, competing with that, and then kind of realizing, a little bit better trigger wouldn't hurt. Obviously, shooting competition. I shot stock for a year, and then thought it's time to upgrade. So I ordered that trigger. You guys, of course, I kind of had to wait till it was in stock. That's okay. That's all right. But once it was in stock, I ordered. It showed up very quickly. Got it in my hands. Got everything installed. And the rest is history. I've been a fan since because one, it improved my shooting experience in a big way. And then as I've become more and more familiar with everything you guys do, I've just been really wowed by everything you got going. And it's actually been really surprising and kind of fun for me to learn more about you, your company, and these young up-and-comers that I had no idea. I mean, if you'd asked me a year or two ago about Grayguns, Bruce Gray, he's Grayguns. But really, you got such a remarkable team surrounding you. Now, we've kind of neglected one piece of the whole thing here, and that is that there are more people than what is just here.
Yes.
And in fact, you've in the last year or so expanded, and you've got a whole operation back out in Indiana.
We do.
You want to touch on that?
Yeah, absolutely. We recognized when we were in Spray, Oregon, which is a town of 150 people in a county the size of Rhode Island with 1,400 people in it. I would have entire shifts where I go run traffic and not see another car.
Yeah.
Right? Where we're packed into 1,800 square feet, and we needed to make some room. We needed to be able to expand. And so we split off the shipping, receiving, sales, and marketing under Michael Grasso, a dear friend of mine, a 35-year LAPD detective sergeant, and a friend of mine for a long, long time, who's a brilliant guy, who basically took that and helped us build our brand in a very large global sense, and created a sales and marketing and fulfillment system that has been really effective. With some health challenges that he's having right now, we're trying to take some pressure off him, frankly.
Sure.
He's doing well.
Yeah.
But we're recognizing as well, though, that internally we still have some communication issues between ourselves in terms of just knowing what's in stock, what's not. And some of those have added to some of Jordon's challenges to be able to keep things in stock and take care of the customer and say, I love that trigger, I want another one.
Yeah.
And so we've made the difficult decision to bring all of that back to Reedsport, where we can have it all in one room, so that basically Jordon can look through a door and say, yeah, we have 9 of those, or we have 873, as the case may be. And we're reorganizing our company so that we can actually get maximum benefit with least amount of stress for the folks that have been busting their butts for us for a couple of years back there.
Yep.
And so that actually is all going to work out, I think, very well for everyone. And it's going to allow us to consolidate things and be much more efficient on the production side, which is, again, this is Jordon's big challenge. His main job is to make sure that things get made and get out on time.
Yeah.
And we needed to do that for him so that he had every tool at his disposal to be able to execute on that. And he's been doing a phenomenal job with it.
Yeah.
But yeah, we have a bunch of people. We have 8 people in Reedsport. We have 3 in Indianapolis. And then we have other people that are very much part of the Grayguns family that have their own independent companies, but they're really, really closely linked.
Right.
And then, of course, I think 6R has, 1,800 employees or so.
Yeah,
and by
a
extension, we get, you can't hurt it. We
That
already
was me
proved that.
knocking the gun over.
Yeah. No, you won't hurt that scope.
Yeah.
And so we do have a larger organization probably, and I think a more capable one than most people know.
Yeah.
Most people, I think, when they think of Grayguns, they think of custom pistol smithing. They may know my personal reputation going back years ago, building 1911s and such. They may know about P320 triggers, but they probably don't know that we have essentially top of the market stuff for everything for a 6R pistol.
Yeah. Jordon, just go over for us real quick. I mean, what are, I'm positive I've got podcast listeners that don't know what you guys offer, in totality. So can you overview for us, everything? Well, maybe not everything, but give us a pretty good idea of everything that Grayguns does.
So I guess we could start with the classic P-Series line.
Yep.
We do, we have a couple different types of triggers. We have ones that are just drop-in replacements, don't change any weight. They're just shoe replacements, and then which also have features of pre- and over-travel adjustability, both curved and straight at the moment.
Yep.
We also have what we call the ELS, Enhanced Leverage System, where it's a trigger bar combo, where it'll, just dropping it in, will reduce the double action pull by about 20 or 30%, somewhere in that range, depending on where the gun starts, right?
Yep.
And so that's for the trigger. And in the case of trigger bar replacements, that's kind of where we're at. With the enhanced leverage system, we have a straight, dual adjustable, a hybrid, which is in our LDC that we had at Range Day, and coming soon is going to be a curved version as well.
Cool.
We also have our own short reset kit that is similar to SIG's. We have a machine sear that'll help reduce your reset. It also comes with a safety lever and some mainsprings also.
I might mention that our machine tool steel SRT system is made in cooperation with SIG because, of course, they have the SRT as a production item. Ours is oriented more toward complementing our parts, but it's still directly cross compatible.
Yeah.
Just a nice part.
Yeah, that's awesome.
Yep.
That's cool.
Another thing we just came out, I want to say beginning of the year or towards the end of last year, was our new Strut System, where it'll help reduce any spring fatigue, any rubbing of the spring in the strut that you feel in the double action pull, any kind of grittiness or texture that you feel, that helps pretty much take it all out.
Yeah, it makes the hammer really smooth and flat.
Yeah, it does. It really helps. We also include an aluminum seat. So instead of the plastic one that comes from the factory, it's aluminum machined in-house, actually. That was one of my first projects once we got our new machine, which also comes with a master spring set. So 2 main springs and then our competition sear spring. That pretty much does it for our P-Series line.
Yeah, well, we have dual adjustable SAO triggers as well for the various different versions of the SAOs, whether it be the X5 or the Legion style, depending on the trigger bar.
Yep, that makes sense.
And those I think people are starting to kind of catch on to them. Again, being dual adjustable, you can completely really just trim out all the excess motion and shorten up the reset without affecting safety values, which is really, really critical.
Yeah, that's
absolutely cool. And guide rods. We do have guide rods available, a solid steel machined. Then 320, I think, is one of the biggest things that we're known about. We have hybrid and straight adjustable for over travel that you can pair with with our drop-in competition kit, and which includes a sear that we modify from the factory to help make that trigger pull nice and crisp. It includes 4 competition weight sear springs and then 4 intermediate sear springs that are in between the competition weight and what comes from the factory, so you can kind of play with what you want. If you like a really nice light trigger pull, you got nice competitions weight sear springs. And then if you want a little bit more, if you don't quite like a 3.5, 4 pound trigger, there's something a little bit heavier for you, but it still gives you a little bit of drop from the factory. It includes also trigger bar springs. That is competition weight, and then also another intermediate. So it gives.
It splits the difference.
And so that intermediate, if you don't like the factory one that really pushes your finger out there, it's a little bit softer, but it still gives you a nice tactile reset. And then the competition weight one is pretty soft for those who like that.
Awesome. Altogether, people can expect a trigger pull that could be around 3 or maybe even a little under 3 with the lightest choices of springs, which we, of course, recommend for range use. And, as Jordan's saying, you can kind of fine-tune and you can get gradations now to get trigger weight and texture that you want all the way up to factory or a little less.
Yeah. Excellent.
I guess expanding on that, we also have guide rods, solid steel guide rods for both the full-size and the X5 series. Comes with a 15-pound 1911 style recoil spring, which allows you to kind of customize if you reload, especially in competition. You can change those recoil springs to tune it to your load that you shoot. The 15 is pretty similar to the factory, so it will shoot pretty much everything that you can feed it. We also have grip modules, those really pretty laser stippled grip modules that Mike Grosso came out with.
Grayscale.
Brilliant. Grayscale. It's brilliant stuff. It's brilliant stuff. And you wouldn't believe how many grip modules he sells. You just wouldn't believe it. It's amazing.
I'll tell you, it really makes a big difference. Obviously, just in the typical textured areas. But what I appreciate, especially like on the X5 series or the X series, is how you filled in even some of the empty space and just made sure that everything basically where your hand is going to be in contact, it has texture.
That's right.
As a guy that likes a lot of texture, but not necessarily super aggressive, but just having everything filled in. It's a pet peeve of mine to pick up a gun and be like, why is there this big, open, smooth space, where my palm of my support hand needs to go, know?
Right.
So you guys do a really good job. I've found it's made a big difference for me in the way I grip my gun.
Thank you. I appreciate that, and I'm going to pass that back to him. He I know he and his laser man that he's paired up with are always looking at different ways and new designs and such. I know he's got other things he's going to be coming out with, but that's been such in a sense a simple concept, but just brilliantly executed, and the way he's done it, I think, is just great, and it's made a huge difference for us.
Yeah,
it's been really a great product.
Yeah, and then of course you've got even parts and things for P365, like straight trigger, for instance.
Yep. And we just came out. I didn't say we just came out, but probably in the last quarter of the year, we came out with the over travel adjustable version. So now
I've got it. I love it.
Yeah, well, that's great to hear. Put a lot of work into refinishing it and making sure it's nice and smooth on your finger. And we also, one of the reasons why we added the over travel adjustability is that from factory there is some tolerance of where you can have right from the factory pretty much no over travel, or you can have a little bit that you need to would want to get rid of. So having that screw to be able to adjust it makes it where it's a lot more uniform, I guess, across the board.
Exactly.
So,
it takes all any variations in factory between their tolerance regime and allows you to just dial it out.
Yeah.
Yeah.
No, I wasn't sure how much a difference it would make, and arguably maybe not a ton of difference, but I did have a little bit of slop there on the over travel side of things.
Sure.
And, just being able to dial that right to a place that just, people pick up mine and try that trigger and they go, oh, wow, that's really nice.
Well, and I think what you'll find over time as pistols wear in and such, that value changes.
Yeah.
And having the ability to kind of go back and tweak it a little bit to keep the trigger consistent is important.
Agreed. Yeah. Excellent. You got mag base plates
for the 320.
All kinds of things.
Also a product that Grasso came up with. Yep.
Yeah. So it kind of sounds like kind of maybe the more gunsmithing things are done in Oregon, and then kind of maybe the grips and some of that base pads are done out
accessories
in Indiana.
And will continue to be.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Yep.
Yes.
Yeah. That's cool.
Yeah, because we're really wanting Michael Grasso to focus very hard on that because it's been an incredibly important part of our business. And again, we're not here specifically to make money, honestly. And it's not like I'm up for sainthood or anything. But again, the reason we're here is because I want these guys to be successful, and I want the company to be able to employ a bunch of people. I want us to grow and be able to do good things.
It makes a difference in people's lives.
It absolutely does.
To have good gainful employment that that they're happy and satisfied with. And I feel the same way about our guys.
Yes.
And that's the best feeling in the world to know that what we do at concealedcarry.com puts food on families' tables, puts roofs over heads.
Absolutely.
And they enjoy and they love their jobs.
Isn't that a great feeling?
Oh, it feels amazing.
And so for a guy like Michael to be able to come in and create an entire new market and an entire new product line just out of his head.
In a big way.
You
guys made a splash with
and do it, again, top of the market stuff, do it for a reasonable price, and be able to make scads of them, working with our partners here at 6 Hour. It's been a blessing to us. And so we want to turn him loose and just have him just go nuts with it. We really do.
Yeah.
He's done just a phenomenal job for us in this.
Awesome. Is there anything we missed or failed to cover?
I don't know that we have necessarily, Jordy. I would like to just say that just out of the interest of naked self-promotion, which I don't really do, I'm not good at, but when you're talking about the history of the company and where I personally came from with it, again, I'm very proud of the fact and don't mind saying that because of our long relationship with SIG, I've been working with them in one level or another somewhat officially for about 15 years now, ever since before Mr. Cohen came in. And because of my long history working on SIGs, there's a fellow named Lou Gosnell, who I hope to run into here at the shop, or at the show. He's a police officer, old friend of mine, hip-stick shooter from back in the day. Great guy. Haven't seen him in a while. I did a 226 for him when they first came out back in the mid-'80s. And from there, I've been working on these things really long and hard. I'm proud of where we've been able to go with it. I am, understandably, I guess, proud is the only word, of being able to being somebody that could actually originate these things, whether it be the dual adjustable trigger system that we've come up with or the enhanced leverage systems that we're working with in the ELS, and which actually has found its way into other things as well. Being able to do a number of things for SIG, which are proprietary to them, which that's between you and SIG. We're very proud of that. And what I want to do is give these guys the capability to be able to go on with that. I'm not going to be around forever. They're going to be around for a long time. and I want them to be able to continue to innovate and stay kind of at that cutting edge.
Yeah.
And that's the biggest change, and that's the biggest part of the vision that I guess I really want to articulate to you that maybe I didn't make clear before.
Yeah.
We don't want to be huge. We just want to be in front.
Well, I think that's a really good place to just sort of wrap this up. I mean, we can certainly talk again and do something again down the road, but I really appreciate the last, honestly, it was the fastest hour and 15 minutes I think I've had in quite some time. So,
you're very kind. Thank you, Riley.
It's been a pleasure to chat with you guys, to bring you and your team on, talk about all these different things, historical context stuff, look at some of the cool things, latest and greatest things you're doing. And of course, the whole lineup of products that you guys got, all that you can find at grayguns.com.
Grayguns.com, spelled with an A, Grayguns.com.
Yeah, that's right. Be clear about that. Which is really, I think, the correct and proper way to spell gray.
Yes.
Gray.
I think so. Absolutely. Well, it's a little distinction between maybe Scottish and English, perhaps.
Right.
It could be, and it matters to me. But every now and then we'll have a customer that'll be frustrated because they couldn't get a hold of us on email, and we're finding that they're spelling our name wrong.
Sure.
It happens.
Yeah, I'm sure.
Yes. But Riley, again, thank you so much.
Thank you,
It's
Bruce.
been an absolute pleasure.
Thank you, Jordan.
Thank you.
Yeah.
All right, guys. Well, stay tuned for more great coverage from the show, and thank you for being a part of this episode today.
Thank you.
All righty. Wasn't that a great interview with those three guys? I thoroughly enjoyed it. Thank you so much, Bruce, Keith, and Jordan of Grayguns. You guys heard the website. He threw it out there. Again, grayguns.com is where to find them. And, of course, today's honorary sponsor of the episode, Sig Sauer. We again, thank you so much to Sig for their hosting of us at their booth for the podcast. We had a great time there that week. And so with that, we're going to wrap it up. I'm going to let you go. And so with that, until next time, and by the way, next interview is also pretty darn awesome with Jack Carr, author of The Terminal List, True Believer, and soon to be released Savage Son. That'll be a good one. Tune in for that one. Should be aired tomorrow, so we'll look forward to it. Until then, train right, train often, and train safe so you can fight hard, fight fast, and fight true. Take care.